Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katlyn Duncan and I am a traditionally published author and ghostwriter. So today I'm going to talk to you about BookCon. Yes, you will probably see a ton of videos coming out about BookCon lately, and I just wanted to share my experience with all of you. So if you didn't see my surviving BookCon video, I will put that in the cards above and the description below so you can check it out. But in the past, I've had some issues going to BookCon, so this is my second year since said issues, and I had a great time just as I did last year. So I went to the Saturday of BookCon, and it was the first day of BookCon after Book Expo America. And I have to say I was really excited, and I did not get a lot of sleep the night before, so that was a bit tricky the next day because I had to wake up super early so that I could make the Simon Teen breakfast, which I had won through the BookCon website. That is one thing I would recommend. If you do go to BookCon, check out some of the raffles that they have ahead of time because you can win some amazing opportunities. And this was the first year that I won one, and I was really excited to go. So I had to leave around 6:40 on the train so that I could make it around the time for the breakfast. So of course, my train was late. I was a little nervous about making sure I made it there on time. I wasn't sure if they would not let me in if I was late, but I did make it about a half hour before the breakfast started. So once I reached BookCon, I sort of ran to the table where I was supposed to get a wristband, and then I waited in the wrong line for the breakfast. And until some lovely woman told me that I had the wrong wristband and that they had taken everyone else with my wristband in already. So I rushed to the front of the line. I was like, let me in. But thankfully I was still early, and there were other people checking in. So we were able to get on the show floor before anyone else. So that helped because the lines can get really big. So once we were properly checked in, we walked through, picked out our breakfast. They had a nice spread of bagels and muffins and coffee and water and all that, and I made sure to grab some water because I'm notoriously not a water drinker and I always need to drink more. So I grabbed my bagel, and they actually had assigned seats for everyone, which was great, so I didn't have to worry about not getting a seat or getting a bad seat or whatever. But there were 6 round tables, and I did see a few booktubers in there. So after that, there was a big announcement, and I'll put some pictures up on the side here about what happened at the event and who was at the event, but I'll also talk about it. So we sat down, we were chatting with each other about books and BookCon and things like that. And once they announced we were going to start, they sort of went over the rules. So it was sort of like an author speed dating via a group of readers. It was interesting. So an author would sit down at the table, and we would have 8 minutes to talk to them about whatever we wanted. So there were 6 authors, 6 tables, 6 authors. So at the end of the event, we got a bag with all of the authors' books in them, and some of them were actually signed. So I'm gonna go over the books as I go over the authors, and so you can see how they all come together. So the first author who sat at the table with us was Margaret Rogerson. She wrote Sorcery of Thorns. I've heard pretty good things about this book so far for those who have read it early. I believe it comes out today, which will actually be yesterday when you see this video go live. So she was super nice. I did ask a question about her background and how that plays into her writing. She actually has an anthropology degree, and that was an interesting conversation we had. And it was a lot of fun. She was very nice, very personable, and I really enjoyed my time with her, and I hope that I really enjoy her book. So the next author we met was Brittany Morris. She's a debut author of Slay, which will be out September of this year. So this is an ARC that we received, and it was so nice to sit down with her. She actually said she wrote this book in a week and then cold queried. She actually did put it into, I believe it was PitMad, but I might be wrong about that. It was one of the Twitter pitch sessions, and she had a lot of interest, but she did end up cold querying for her agent, and then it came out. I'm so excited for her. This seems like a really awesome book. It's about a black gamer and this game that she created, and then a murder happens outside of the game, and then she has to sort of deal with the consequences after that. So I read the first chapter while I was waiting in line for a signing, and it is so good, but I am going to put it on my to be read shelf for now because I want to read it closer to release date. So the next author we talked to was S.K. Ali. She wrote Love from A to Z. She was so fun to talk to. We talked to her about travel and places she's been and places she wants to go, and I'm really excited to read this book. I believe this is her second book. Yes, her first one was Saints and Misfits, and I'm really excited to read it. She seemed very happy to talk about her book, and I'm happy to read it. So the next author who sat at our table was the awesome Jenny Han. So this is the sequel to All the Boys I Loved Before with Laura Jean as the main character, and this was recently a Netflix movie, which was awesome. And it was so good, and I cannot wait for the second movie to come out. So Jenny was really, really fun to talk to, very personable, and she talked about, someone asked a question about where she thinks Laura Jean is now, and I thought it was a really interesting answer because she sort of lets the characters go do their own thing after she's done writing, which I thought was very similar to how I feel about my writing. I don't, unless there's a planned sequel or something, I sort of just let my characters live their lives, and you know, you just wonder about them. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation. So the next author we talked to was the amazing Cassie Clare. This book is huge. Like, it's really big. It's hard to hold with one hand. So this is Ghost of Shadow Market, which she wrote with a bunch of other authors within the Shadow Hunters series. And she was so fun to talk to. We ended up somehow talking about time travel and how she loved it, but how hard it was to incorporate that as a writer into her books. So I appreciated that conversation a lot because, I mean, I'll never say never with my writing, but I don't think I will write time travel because I do understand how difficult it can be to write and getting all the threads properly done, because I know there are a lot of readers out there who really are sticklers when it comes to that, and I admit I am one of them. I always try to figure out if everything is true so that I can sort of follow along with a particular time travel story. So anyway, that was a good conversation, and we also got the chapter sampler of Chain of Gold, which is the Last Hours, book 1. It's a new series within the Shadow Hunters series. So I admittedly have been out of this series for a while, but I mean, this cover is totally drawing me in. It's gorgeous. So I think I may take a look at this chapter sampler, and maybe I'll start reading them again. So the last author who came to our table was Sanda Menon. She was so lovely to talk to. I have not read any of her books yet, but I did see an interview with her on Kim Chance's channel, which I'll link below if you're interested in checking it out, which I really liked. She was very nice, and I also didn't realize that she was a therapist by day, so we had an interesting conversation about that too, and she's so lovely, and I can't wait to read this. And also, we got a sampler of Curses and Kisses, which is her next book. I don't believe this is a contemporary novel. I think it's a fantasy, but don't quote me on that. Yeah, I believe it's a fantasy, and it comes out February 2020. So we have a little bit to wait. I really want to read the sampler, but I'm also sort of afraid of getting really into it and then having to wait that long, and I'm not very good at waiting. So we'll see. This looks really good, and it was so lovely to talk to her, and yeah. So that was it for the Simon Teen Breakfast. I was so lucky to get invited to that and getting all of these books, which started off my day pretty well, even though it added to the ache in my shoulder at the end of the day. I'm really happy to get all of these books. So after the breakfast, we were given maybe 10 minutes on the floor before the gates were open. So I was sure to stay away from the doors for as long as I could because there was a rush of people coming in. I did go to the autographing lines. The layout of the show was a lot different than last year, so I wanted to get my bearings before everyone came in. So I found out where my first signing was, and I sort of started wandering the floor after that because I think I had about a half hour before I wanted to get in line. For a lot of these autographing sessions, I tried to get in line the very latest 45 minutes before the signing because the lines get really long and it's, you know, waiting in line is never really fun. So, but I did do a lot of reading in the lines because I have all these books from the breakfast. So this is editing Katlyn, and I am a jerk, and I forgot the one person that I was so excited to meet at BookCon, and that is Julie from Pages and Pens. We had met last year, and we met before my first signing, and yet I forgot to mention it during my video, so now she gets a special shout out. Thank you, Julie, for being so nice and talking to me for a bit before our lines, and I hope you had a great time, and now you get your own shout out in my video. Awesome. I'll link her down below if you want to check out our channel. I highly recommend you check out her channel. It's super fun. It's all full of books and honest opinions, and she's great. And it's purple hair, so you know. Now back to the video. So the first autographing session I went to was for Evangeline Lilly. If you don't know who she is, she was Kate Austen on Lost and also the Wasp in the Marvel Characters universe. She wrote a series of children's books, and I mentioned the first book that was released in a different video, which I will link because I don't remember which video I did it in. This is the second book in the Squickerwonkers series. This is the demise of Selma the Spoiled. In the first book, we sort of get to know Selma, and in this book, we get to know what happens to her. So when Evangeline came out, I have to admit I was a bit starstruck. She is absolutely gorgeous in real life, and her looks definitely match her personality. She was so kind and generous with her time. I have a picture of us together, which I didn't actually get a picture of me looking at the camera, but we really didn't have a lot of time, which was the same with a lot of these authors. You really only get maybe 2 minutes with them, maybe at the most, but we talked about the book, and it was such a lovely memory, and I'm really, really glad I signed up for her signing. So on to the next autographing session. So in between Evangeline Lilly and this author, I wandered the floor a bit. I didn't really see any arcs. I know there were a lot of drops throughout the day like there were at Book Expo, but I really wasn't interested in fighting for these books because I already had a ton that I was carrying, and I wanted to be really selective on what I brought home. There have been years that I just like go crazy and then don't end up reading the books, which I didn't think was fair. So anyway, so on to my next signing, which was actually funny because my next 2 signings, I had already received their books earlier that day. Weird, right? I forgot to mention one of these books in my my haul from the Simon Teen Breakfast, but I'll mention them in a minute. So the friend that I went with didn't have a chance to sign up for the autographing session, so I picked 2 other authors for him to sign up for, which hadn't been sold out at that point when we picked our tickets. I picked this author prior to knowing that I was going to meet her at the breakfast. So I was waiting in line for this signing, and there was a young girl behind me who didn't realize that you needed a ticket to get in, and all the tickets were sold out, and she seemed really bummed. So as I knew I was getting another one of these books, I actually gave her the book that I had from the Simon Teen Breakfast, and I was happy to make her day because I honestly don't need 2 copies of the same book, and especially since I was about to get this one personalized versus just signed. So that book and that author was Brittany Morris with Slay. So she was very generous. She actually remembered me from the breakfast, which I thought was really cool, and I got her signature in the book with my name. So again, I'm really happy to read this book, and I'm excited for it. So this was the book I did receive at the breakfast. They were not at the breakfast, but we did receive the ARC ahead of time. I actually ended up giving the other copy to my friend. That one wasn't signed. This is Frank Miller and Thomas Wheeler, and it's called Cursed. And I was actually the last person in line. I had to scramble after Brittany's signing to get over there. So I was the last one, and they seemed very relieved that their signing was over. So I got it signed by Thomas Wheeler and Frank Miller. And I also received a beautiful picture, and Frank Miller signed it as well. So to get into this line, they did require a purchase, which was fine because the art copy has a lot of TBD when it comes to the artwork. So I'm happy to get the book when it comes out, and I'm excited to get that book mail, but I will probably read it ahead of time. It comes out in October, so I know I'll be super excited to read it. So at this point, I had about 3 hours until my next signing, which was my most anticipated signing other than Evangeline Lilly, and I wanted to wander the floor a bit to just see what was going on. I really liked going to the indie authors alley last year, and this year it had grown even more. So I went, so where on the show floor used to be the autographing, they switched it for a lot of the vendors. So it had expanded so much this year. I'm so excited to see how far it goes next year. So as I was waiting in line for one of the booths, I ran into my critique partner, who I hadn't met yet in person. It was so lovely to meet her, and I also met a friend of hers who's also an author, and her name is Savannah. I will link their channels down below. So like I said, it was so nice to meet them in person, and then we wandered over to Mandy Lynn and Bethany Adazada's booth. I hadn't met them in real life, but I do follow them on AuthorTube, and they were both so lovely. I ended up picking up Mandy Lynn's She's Not There, which is a psychological thriller, and Bethany Adazada's Eveline's Number, which is a young adult dystopian book. It's the first in one of her series. So they were so lovely to meet in person, and actually me and Mandy have a lot in common. We live relatively close to one another, so it was so nice to make a connection with these authors who I've only seen online. So I love running into people like that in real life, and the experience was really, really great. Also, another author tuber that I met in real life, who I had spoken to through DMs and things like that, was Brittany Wang. She was so lovely. I met her husband too, and we actually had lunch together with my critique partner and Savannah, and it was such a good time, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to meet people at fun events like this. So that was great. And also randomly, I ran into Stephanie Garber on this show floor, and I had met her previously at an SCBWI conference, and I went to her workshop with her agent, and it was so great. So when I ran into her, I think I fangirled a little bit. I hope I didn't scare her, but I was so excited to meet her, and she was so lovely and offered to take a picture with me, which I will show here. And it was really, really great to meet her in real life again and tell her how much I love Finale and all of that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So other than wandering the floor with my friends, it was a really chill day. There were a lot of people, admittedly. There were a lot of people and a lot of crowds, but there were plenty of opportunities to get away from the crowds. I actually did not go to one panel this year, which I was sort of bummed about, but not, because I really got to experience the show floor and all it had to offer. So I went to a couple panels last year and they were great, and this year I just spent more time hanging around. So that's another option for anyone who might feel overwhelmed to going to an event like this, that there are opportunities for you to just hang out and relax and just enjoy books. So the last signing I was ready for. My legs were killing me, and I was just ready to meet this author. So James S. Murray, who is one of the 4 guys on Impractical Jokers, wrote a horror novel, and I actually read the first book in the series prior to going to BookCon, and I have to admit it scared the pants out of me a little bit. I haven't read a horror book in a while, and this one was kind of like creepy. He wrote it with Darren Wearmouth. The first one is called Awakened, and it was really good. So I was really excited to get the second book signed. But what I didn't know is that the second book is not out yet. So like I did with Cursed, I did another pre-order. So I did have the opportunity to meet him and get it signed. But also, because I pre-ordered Brink, which is number 2, I got a book plate for the novel that I can stick in there when it comes to my house. So overall, the experience was a lot of fun with him. I'll put a video up of him saying hi to everyone.
Hi guys.
He was the only author that jumped out of their chair and high-fived everyone on the way down the line and back up the line, and he was just a ball of energy, and that was really helpful after a day of wandering around with lots of bags full of books on my shoulders. So when I got to the front of the group, like I said, you only really get 2 minutes, and I mean, I had a lot to say, but it was so lovely. I talked about how we love the show and how my family loves the show, and we just had a nice laugh about that, about how my kid likes the show, which is probably not the target audience for it, but it's a nice thing that me and my family do whenever there's a new episode. And he was so charming and lovely, and he was so nice. He grabbed my phone, knew how to open it. He asked about my dog who's on my lock screen, and he opened it and he took 3 selfies, and I'll put those right here. And it was just so nice to like have the opportunity to get a picture with him and not have to worry about someone taking the picture for you and if it's not good enough and things like that. So I've actually had pictures in the past that were less than flattering for me, so I thought this one was a great picture and a great addition to this great day that I had at BookCon. So at that point we were winding down. We did one more lap around the show floor, and then we sort of said goodbye to BookCon. It was a lot of fun that day, and I'm so glad I went. I'm so glad I went for one day, because Sunday I was exhausted. I was so tired, but it was a good tired. I was sore, but it was a good sore. So a few authors that I managed to sneak pictures of, even though I wasn't in their lines. Susan Dennard, I got Alyssa Milano, Victoria Avegard, and I also saw Victoria Schwab, but I got so weird internally about it. I wanted to say hi. She was just walking on the floor, but I always feel like at this events that authors are like, they got Secret Service around them, when they don't. They just have like a publicist or a friend or whatever. But I was gonna be like, I love your book, but I can't remember your book's name. And it's literally right here. I see it every time I walk in my office. Like, that's just one of them. She has like a ton. So I didn't end up saying anything, but it was really cute. She did have her signature cat ears on. So those are little fun things you get when you attend an event like this. So anyway, that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do give it a like and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you know the next time I post a video. And I'll see you soon.